Hey everyone, it's Kenlyn and welcome back to my channel. I have a special guest today. We don't do this very often, but it's a really important conversation, especially when we're coming out of this eclipse season. So first, let me introduce who's sitting here with me as a very special friend and marketer and business bestie, Linda Basso. Welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me.
It's really great to have you. I will tell everyone that I have had a crucible around business marketers, and this is a business marketing conversation. I've hired so many people who have not delivered on the promise or supported me to deliver on the promise until I came to Linda. And that's why she's here. And that's why I've agreed to partner with her on a thing that we're going to tell you about in this podcast. But we're also going to show you a couple things that you need to know in order to launch or relaunch your business. So if you're coming to this podcast and you're kind of jaded, like you've spent a lot of money on things and you didn't get the result, or you built something that you didn't ask for, or it didn't work, well, you're in the right place. Have you ever been jaded, Linda? You know what we're talking
Oh,
about here.
oh my, okay. So part of my story that you probably don't know is that I have what I call an MBA in online marketing, not intentional, right? Like I was in branding and marketing for like 18 years before I came to the online space. And then the amount of learning that I had to do in the on ramp that I had to get on to actually learn how to do the online space, right? Like when I first started coaching, I could just go to networking events and go to conferences and I could meet people. And it's really easy, or it was easy for me when I was directly with someone. I could sense, what do they need? What's an answer to the questions that they're asking? Like I would just say, oh, and I just start helping them. And the next thing I know, I would have a client, right? So it was super easy for the first, I don't know, 4 or 5 years of my business. And then I decided, okay, I don't want to go to these conferences and I don't want to do all of this, stuff, because I was having my third child. And then this was just before the pandemic. I made this decision that I was done traveling. And so then I tried to go online, and I spent the next 3 years getting this MBA. Cost me over $140,000.
Actually, that makes me feel better because I did the same thing. And thank the goddess that we got to be connected, because Linda has really supported me in getting crystal clear. I think that's what, if anything, I can say that these intense ass energies that we've been through since 2020, they've really put us through the ringer. But out of that, there's a clarity that's emerged. And when I met Linda, she put her expertise and that MBA that you're talking about together with my internal clarity about what works for me, what I love to do. And that unfolded the next steps in my business in ways that I wanted to bring to other people. So I want to just say too, that we did a survey in my community, and 85% of the women in my community either have a business, a coaching, healing, solo entrepreneur business, or want one. And so I figured it's time to get on the mat and support these women in not having to get their $140,000 MBA program so that they can just do the thing. And I'll say one thing, like when I was coaching with the Divine Feminine Business Mastery, what I got present to, and really why the Evolving Sisters Network unfolded from there, was that people who want to help people and help their relationships, their business, their mindsets, their health, whatever it is that you do as a coach or a healer, you really don't want to learn all the business BS. You don't want to learn marketing because it's
Not
a
only
full-time
that,
job.
right, learning the marketing, but it's not only that. I would say that most of the healers and coaches that I've come across actually have, and I think you do too, tech terror.
Well, that's that. I was going to get to that. Yeah. was going to get to that.
Yeah, you don't want to do the tech, right? And it feels overwhelming to have to make all those decisions. And frankly, the explosion in the online space has made that worse, not better,
Yeah.
because with this explosion of tools, now you have platforms and tools that should be considered like, hey, that's in my toolbox. They're coming out and saying, I'm the thing that's going to get you clients.
Yeah.
And it's not true. Kajabi, there's no piece of AI software or platform or little app or making your own app. All of that is like convoluting what you actually need to do to launch a successful business. And so when you search for help, right, you're like, okay, let me get myself educated or get the answer to this question. What you're confronted with are pages and pages of tools saying they're going to get you the client or they're going to get you your business launched. And those are tools that actually should be used much further down the business path, after you've gotten clients, after you know what your offer is, after you know what your message is, after you know who your niche is, right? Like there's so much foundational work that has to be done in order to launch it. Not so much, it's actually just a few simple foundational pieces have to be done like before you're ready for all of that other business stuff that you're talking about.
Okay, so let's dive into a couple of those things, because in my community, when we're talking about launching and growing or relaunching, because you don't have consistent ways of getting clients, we need to have this conversation. This is the very conversation that has to be had that you're not going to find when you sign up for Kajabi. I mean, I just had a girlfriend text me who's not my client, a friend in the area. And she was asking me about tech, which is hilarious because last year I went on a tech crucible that almost killed me, buying into a platform that has all in one. It's all total BS. It did not work that way. But what I noticed about her was she is seeing clients. She's always seeing clients and she wants to grow. But her thing is that she thought that the tech was going to get her to grow. And I was like, no, do not invest in that. So can you talk about if someone is at that stage where they're not making consistent income, but they want to, and they also don't want to get hijacked by these conversations of tech and marketing, what are some of the pointers that you can point us to? And I know we're going to get into it with our free webinar that we're going to offer, but let's like give people a little nugget right now.
Yeah, so it's in some sense, just imagine if you were building a house, right? You have to start with the right plans and you have to start with the right foundation. So without those two things, right? So having some amount of knowledge or some kind of guidance, that's the planning, and then building a foundation. If you don't do that correctly, nothing can be built upward from there, right? So without a stable foundation, nothing can be built. And we want to help, we want to serve, so we get so excited by the thing that we can do, we just jump in there and start sharing about it, like sharing about the modality, right? This changed my life, this is so great, yeah, everybody needs this, right? And we want to start talking about the thing. You do exactly the opposite in marketing, right? Like the thing stays behind the curtain. Right? Like that's not what you go out with. Okay, so there are 3 things that you have to figure out right away in the very beginning of your business. And I know like your audience is gonna be like, I don't want to hear this, but it's because it's your niche, right? It's who's your audience. Every single thing that you do in marketing is about who it's for. And the example that I can give of that is like, you can imagine if let's say you're not a parent. Okay, you're not a parent, and some person is out there and they keep giving examples about kids and talking to you about the way things happen in a family. You just tune that out because it's not for you, right? It has no meaning, it has no relevance for you. So when coaches and healers are out there talking about their thing, and they're not talking about their thing through the lens of a specific person, then people just tune them out. Right? So your niche, it's the cornerstone for every bit of marketing that you're going to do. The next thing is your offer, right? And so when I say offer, I mean, how are you going to package that work that you're doing in a way that someone wants to buy it and they see it as a solution for themselves, right? When you say, I have sessions, right? Do a coaching session with me. Again, it has no relevance for the person. No one's waking up saying like, oh, I think I need a session today. Right? Like, can you, but they are waking up thinking, oh, shoot, I wish blank wasn't happening, right? So when you have an offer that helps blank not to happen, then, and it's language in a way that they can hear, so it's to that specific person and it's the right offer, that like those are two of the three pillars that you have to have. And then the third one is a way to sell that you love. Right? Because if you have this, you know, you have this person you want to serve and you have this amazing way of putting your work together that would actually serve them. If you don't want to go sell it, then, and this is, I see this all the time. I see super talented women with the goods, right? Like they have it, they can help people and they've helped XYZ person who did kind of like come along and ask them to, but they cannot overcome that whatever's inside, that fear, the dread, the what will they think of me. There's so many things that get in our way around sales, and just this sort of belief that sales can be slimy, right? So those are the three things: your niche, your offer, and your ability to sell.
Let's go into the niche piece a little bit, because I am still working with women who find a fundamental resistance to the idea of having a niche. And yet they understand, because I've said many times inside of my programs, broad is broke. You can't sell modalities. You can sell a modality for a one-off session. And let me just be clear, we're not talking about that. That's not going to get you consistent revenue. And that's not going to have your client have the transformation because they have one session and then they go. But having an overtime package that you can go deep and support the transformation in others, which then pays you what you need to be paid to make a living. So I hope we're clear about what the framework is that we're talking. Mm-hmm. And that kind of resistance to the niche space, what is that? What's going on there?
Well, I think that's a great point that you're making. And that's what anyone who's listening to this that's had that sort of resistance come up, that's the question that you have to explore with yourself, with a coach, is what's underneath that? Because you don't actually have, no one actually has a resistance to niching, right? Like that's too ethereal. It doesn't even mean anything. What you have a resistance to is whatever your inner dialogue about that is. So I've heard everything from, you know, I don't want to leave anyone out, right? So we tend to be very inclusive. Our nature is very generous, and like, you know, we're women, we're like, hey, all of you, anyone who's hurting, come on in, right? But then at the same token, we might start working with certain people and be like, oh my gosh, this is a nightmare client for me, right? And it's zapping all my energy, it's draining me. Like even though we want to be inclusive, the reality is we really do have people that we create love and joy with, and then we have people who rub us the wrong way, right? so it's back to that, what's that story you have? And for every story there, I can do that. For every story, I can show you what's actually happening out in the world, right? So that you can get past it. But you have to figure out first, what is your story? Is it that you're excluding people? Is it that it feels too like too big or too brave to like put a stake in the ground, right? Is it that you think, ooh, when I do that, I mean, if you have this constant, like, what will they think? What will grandma think? What will my cousin think? What will my family think? What will my friends think? Right? If you have that going on, you have to work through that and get to the other side, right? So I could name, I don't know, probably 10 more things, right? Like, so it's really about landing on what is your inner story of that resistance. And that's where we have to start doing the work.
Yeah. And that work's going to pay off, because you can't run a business on a broad, like, I help everyone. And I think through these kinds of eclipses, I don't know about you, but if you have survived with those patterns intact, I don't know how you did it, because most of us are getting exhausted by how we're overgiving. We're getting exhausted by not being seen. We're getting exhausted by not being paid. And so we're willing, I'm going to make a guess, that we're willing to cut the BS in our own pattern that's keeping us stuck in a particular place, and really address it so that we can move forward in the thing that we said that we'd want to do. And what we know in our hearts, and this is why you haven't gotten a job already, if you're listening to this, is because you know in your heart that you've been called to do this. So now it's the question of, how do we do this? And
Yeah.
so that's what Linda and I are teaming up. Do you want to talk a little bit about what our workshop is about?
Yeah, so it's called Your First Paying Client, and it covers the only 5 steps that you need to launch or relaunch a successful coaching business. So it strips away all of the myths and the hype and the more kind of marketing mentality, and strips it back to the foundational steps that you need to take. And it's a 3-hour workshop, so it's not the 30-minute here's a couple tips and buy our program, right? This is a 3-hour working session where we dive really deep into these 5 steps that you have to take to launch or relaunch a successful business, and give you examples and talk you through it and give you frameworks and really help you. I think anyone could watch this or be part of this and walk away with like a nice little blueprint for launching or relaunching their business.
I think it's really important to add something, and I hope this is not a secret that I'm letting out of the bag because, because it would make all the difference to me if I were listening to this webinar for 3 hours. And I'm coming to you all saying this as a person who has taught this. I've taught the very foundational pieces inside of Divine Feminine Business Mastery. And I've watched how women did or did not implement it. And so what we get to do inside of this webinar is show you those pieces. And then if you end up working with us, there's a big surprise that's going to come. You ready for this? Linda's like, what is she going to say?
No, I know. I'm
Do you know
cheering
what I'm going to say?
You go, girl.
Yeah. I mean, what we're going to say is that ultimately we're going to take a lot of that stuff off the table for you and do it for you. Now, I just want to seed that because that's a reason for you to come to this webinar. And why I said yes to partnering with Linda is because we're going to close the gap on the things that have you stuck, not taking action, not getting results. So that's all I'm going to say, because you got to come to the webinar. You got to hear the whole thing just to make sure that you're a fit for that. You're ready for that. You're a yes to that. And then just listen. It's something very special. You want to say anything about that, or did I just say enough about that?
No, I think it's an important point to say that, doing the actual marketing and the copy and all the tech, all of the pieces that it takes to sort of set up a successful business, it's not for everyone, right? So why would you in your home, if you're not the person who can, take care of plants, they don't put you in charge of the plants or they all die, right? Like I'm not a morning person, okay? So I am not up with the kids in the morning, right? Like this is about figuring out your highest and best use, right? Of your time, of your gifts, of your energy. And so if you're not the person that should be doing the doing, don't do it, right? Like be smart about it and figure out a way to get it done. But I will also say that it's not, this is a workshop, right? And you're saying webinar, I'm saying workshop, because this is like, sit down with us. We're going to go through the 5 steps with you and help you land on the answers for yourself. So it's like, come to the working workshop, do some of the work. And then if you want to keep going with us, awesome. But if you don't, you're going to have gotten some amazing insights and understanding.
Yeah. And I think that there's no better time to revisit this information. I do it all the time. This is not something that, and I've said this before when I've taught business, once you know these foundations, it's your touchstone for every time you're in a growth phase or a pivot phase in your business. You always come back to fundamentals. You don't go to what's the next bright, shiny object. Oh, there's AI. That's cool. I'll do that. Well, AI would need all these prompts and inputs of the very thing that you would be talking about with your foundational work. So really, no matter where you are in the process of launching, growing, relaunching, if you haven't gotten to the place where you have consistent income, then it's time to revisit the fundamentals. Come inside with us on this workshop. And I love that because we're actually going to do the work together. Yes. Yeah. And then if there's fire in your belly and there's a fit, that you just be prepared for some really cool stuff that I have never been able to offer before, but because I'm partnering with Linda, we get to offer.
And I think that's the sweetness of this is like, we're really going to demonstrate for you what a good offer is, right? Like by you being with us in the workshop, learning about all the pieces, and then we're going to actually demonstrate to you. And this is how an incredible offer is put together.
Yeah, and you're going to see that you don't have to be perfect. You can but really, when you know what you're talking about, you can show up as you and be the most authentic and beautiful version of you, which basically is going to grow you, grow your confidence, grow your seat, grow your leadership in the very work that you've been gifted as your contribution, as your medicine for this crazy time that we're here to midwife.
So needed, right? So needed.
It's so needed. And there's no accident why there's just tons of people, like 85% of my community is saying, I either am doing that or want to do that, because people are receiving the inner call. All right. I think we've covered a lot of what we get to expound upon even more in our workshop. So I'm going to put the link to our workshop inside of the description section, and I'd love to see you inside. Linda, is there anything else you want to say that we haven't said before we?
No, I just look so forward to meeting your women.
Yeah. Awesome, sisters. All right. Thank you so much, everyone. And we'll see you on the next episode.